was a crime, let me tell you, to waste this movie the way that they did. Hello divas, I hope you're well. Welcome back to another video. First of all, can we just take a moment for the dress, please? You're not going to be able to see all of it here, but oh my god, I feel so summery. It's the first 20-degree day we have here in the UK the whole year. I feel amazing. Honestly, mental illness gone. But yes, we are back with another video, and it is a cinema monthly wrap-up series. I still haven't got a name for this series, but basically this is the video that I do every month where I take you through every film that I saw in the cinema last month. So this video is going to cover all the films I saw in the cinema in March. And let me tell you, there was so much I wanted to see in March. I didn't get to see all of it, but I did manage to go to the cinema 6 times, which is still, you know, it's alright. But the films that I saw in March and that I will be reviewing today are Restless, Opus, One of Them Days, Marching Powder, The Woman in the Yard, and Mickey 17. And let me just tell you, I'm looking at my notes here, and some of these are the lowest rated movies that I have ever done in this series. But there's also some gems in there as well. But yes, they're the movies that we're going to be reviewing this episode. And I feel like we've got a lot to get through, so let's just jump straight into it. But before we do that, don't forget to, you know, all the usual YouTube stuff. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, press the little notification bell as well so you never miss an upload from me. Comment, let me know which movie was your favourite of March. If you saw any of these movies, whether you liked them, whether you disliked them, what was your least favourite one? Let's stir the pot. And also if you have intention of going to see any of these movies and whether any of my reviews have swayed you. That's another thing as well. If you're new to this series, these reviews will obviously be spoiler free. And if there are any points in my reviews where I think, I'm probably going to have to give some spoilers here, I will give you a timestamp on the screen of when to skip through so that you don't have any of these movies ruined for you. But yeah, let's jump straight into it. Starting off with Restless. Now this for me was an unlimited advanced screening. So you guys might know I have the Cineworld Unlimited card. And part of that is, yes, obviously I can go to cinema as much as I want as part of the subscription, but it also means that I get access to some advanced screenings. I'm actually going to one on Monday as well. I'm going to see the Penguin Lessons before it comes out. It's a really cool feature of the subscription. Not an ad, but I wish it was. But yes, this was an advanced screening, and let me tell you, I immediately regretted going to see this movie. Not because it was bad, but because I was stressed. I was stressed out. Look, I'd had a stressful week. I'd literally just a few days before had to put my dog down. And so having to go watch this particular movie was probably not my best decision. I just didn't realise how stressful the movie was going to be. But the plot of the movie is actually very, very simple. This woman has new neighbours move in next door to her, and they are moving in because next door to her is a house where her parents used to live and her parents have recently passed away. The new neighbours move in and she quickly discovers these are the neighbours from hell. They are literally just partying, drugs, alcohol, all night long from like 9 p.m. through to the next morning. And this woman is a nurse. Like, she's got places to be, she needs to sleep. And so we basically watch this woman on this journey of, I think she's still processing a lot of grief. She's still processing her parents and kind of like trying to combat all of that. But also she's starting World War III with the next door neighbours. And I will say, what I think made this film very good, very gripping, was that it was just a very basic storyline. Like, I think it's probably a story that many of us could probably relate to at some point in our lives. So it's a very simple, relatable plot, but where the strength of the movie really comes in is the tension. Like, when I say it was not a good movie for me to watch because it was stressful, I mean that as a compliment. Like, the way they managed to convey the stress, the tension, and all of the emotions through this very simple plot, I thought was very, very good. And when I'm watching some scenes where she's laying in bed not being able to sleep and you can see her slowly losing it, I'm like, oh, I just don't know what I would do in that situation, because these neighbours are fucking scary. Like, they're scary. Part of me was like, I'd just go around there and like kick their ass. But no, you wouldn't. No, you wouldn't though, would you? You'd sit in your room and cry. So this film that started off as a very simple plot slowly becomes more and more like a horror film. And I feel like it's the stress and the tension and the behaviours of others and the things that are outside this woman's control that really turn her everyday life into a horror film. We're going to talk about the ending a little bit here. I'm not going to reveal what happens, but I'm just going to talk about how like I felt about it. So but if you want to completely skip that and go to the next movie, I'll leave the timestamp on the screen here. But I feel like the way that they did the ending, it was, I felt like a really nice light relief to end the film on, because obviously it had been really stressful up until this point. Like, I was getting more and more stressed throughout the movie. At one point I was like, I don't know if I should be watching this. I feel really stressed out, and that's probably just a me problem. But the way that the issue is resolved in the end is so well done and so like humorous that it kind of ends the movie on this really nice note, and it feels so satisfying for the main character because you've seen her like go through hell, and these neighbors have really like made her life hell over the last few months or last few weeks, and you see her get this ending that she really deserves. And also the actors in it as well were so sensational. They were so believable. And obviously, as I said, you're acting out a very simple plot, but they were really the strength in making the film so tense, packed with so much emotion, and just feel so much bigger than what it was. I really enjoyed it, and I gave Restless 3 stars. Now, the second film that I saw in March was Opus. Guys, guys, I had such high hopes with this movie. Obviously, we've got Io Adebri in the lead role, and I absolutely adore her. I just think she's so incredible, and I was so happy to see her get this lead role in an A24 horror movie. And I thought, right, you've got Io Adebri, you've got A24. The ensemble cast was incredible, including the guy from The White Lotus, Nat from Yellow Jackets, and the general plot of the movie was, it is basically about this almost very mystical musical legend who is making a comeback, and how it's kind of like everything is not all as it seems. And I was like, hang on, this is so Sophie Butler coded. Are you fucking kidding me? Like, this is going to be incredible. Also, it was also produced by Nile Rodgers and The Dream, and they obviously produced and made the soundtrack. And they used that soundtrack within the movie, and that makes up the actual album that they're talking about in the movie. And I was like, wait, this is going to be really interesting. Let me go. So I go. I was so disappointed. I was so disappointed in this movie. Oh my god, it feels a crime, let me tell you, to waste this movie the way that they did. Let me just explain, right? First of all, I'll give props where props are due. The actors, phenomenal. There's absolutely nothing wrong with the cast and what they did. They did everything they could and more with what they were given. Io Adebri, all of the ensemble cast that I mentioned, phenomenal. But I think the problem is the cast, as incredible as they were not given enough to work with. And I really feel like the plot of the movie and the whole sort of synopsis and the themes of the movie were so wafer thin, they were so shallow, and it really did for me sum up the problem of like the A24ification of movies. And I'm saying that as someone who loves A24, but you know, if you say to someone, oh yeah, it's an A24 movie, and they can think of an idea in their head of what that movie would be like, it felt like you would ask ChatGPT to write me an A24 cult movie. Like, I'm sorry, I don't mean that offensively. And I felt really sorry for I think it's the director, the guy who actually made the film. I think it's his first big movie that he's made, and I really feel like with more practice and more movies under his belt, he'll probably be incredible. But this was just not executed. I can see all of the pieces on the table, I can see what he was going for, but all of the pieces were just not moved for the right places for the execution. It's like he had set up a checkmate but not actually carried it through. For me, where the main problem lies with the movie is that it relied too heavily on the cult stuff. Now, I wouldn't say that's a spoiler, because it's very obvious from the trailer that like there's gonna be a cult here. And I think it relied too much on the audience being able to put the pieces together, saying something about society, or the movie saying something about society and blah blah blah, but not actually saying it itself. And I think where the movie actually probably would have been a lot better is if it was not a horror film, and if it was actually like a dark comedy, if it was more like a not even Black Mirror, but yeah, just more of like a dark comedy, and focusing more on the celebrity worship side of things. If it was more like Don't Look Up, I think that tone would have suited it a lot more. And if it approached it more from a comedic aspect, and it focused more on the celebrity worshipping rather than the cult aspects, because the cult aspects were just quite boring, and I felt like I'd seen it done before, and I'd seen it done before better. Another problem that I feel like the movie had is it was kind of a victim of like the Saltburn effect, where it wanted to be weird, it wanted to be different, but only within the mainstream boundaries of what is acceptable of weird and different, which kind of defeats the whole purpose of making a weird and different movie. And it feels like people want their movies to be water cooler moments and be talked about moments across the internet because, oh, it's a bit weird, it's a bit kooky, but the whole point of doing something a bit weird and kooky is that there's a point to it. Like, what are you saying? What is the point in that? And are you just kind of being a little bit kooky because it it gives you that viral effect. And that's what I feel that this movie was doing, because there just wasn't enough substance behind it. But I'll be honest, I don't even think it worked, because I hadn't really seen anyone talking about this movie. I thought the first hour was a lot better than the last 40 minutes. I think once we fully got into the whole cult stuff, I was kind of a little bit like, I'm pretty sure. Look, I think I've seen this film before, and I didn't like the ending. The first hour was so much more funny, it was so much more engaging. I was literally sat there like, okay, what is going on? Another compliment I will give the film, the music generally fantastic, but I mean, look, what can you expect from The Dream and Nile Rodgers? The Dream and Nile Rodgers working together, that's my dream. Hey, that's my dream, baby. And I've actually listened to this soundtrack, like, consistently since leaving the movie. I really love it. But yeah, it was just a big disappointment to me, unfortunately. It had all of the good makings there, it had all of the ingredients, but just not quite the right execution. And I feel like it was trying to be something that is maybe just outdone. Maybe are we living in an era where cult films and like A24 style horror movies need to provide something more? It feels like we've seen all of these films before. So yeah, unfortunately all of the good ingredients were just not enough to save this film for me. I'm glad that I saw it, because hey, I get to form my own opinion on it. And you know what, when I was watching it, I actually wasn't, you know, sometimes you watch films and you think, I'm fucking bored, I want to go home. There's one movie I did actually walk out of, and it was Batman vs Superman. It's like over a decade ago. I went to go see it with my dad and my brother, and I was watching it like, why the fuck am I here? I'm so fucking bored. And I actually did walk out of that. I left them in the cinema and I went and got food because I was so fucking bored. But with this, I wasn't bored watching it. It was just more like, upon reflection, like, oh, that was disappointing. So it's not like I had a bad time watching the film. It just wasn't what I'd hoped it would be. And because of that, I did unfortunately give this movie 2.5 stars. I'm sorry, it's actually the lowest I've ever rated a movie in this series. And there is another film on the list this month which has also got a 2.5 stars. So, not a good month. The third film that I saw at cinema in March was One of Them Days. And I was trying to get my group chat to go see this film for way too long. But unfortunately, they all have lives and jobs that don't revolve around going to watch things at the cinema. So I did eventually just bite the bullet, and I went to go see it on my own. And I'm so glad that I did, because this film is so damn funny. Oh my god, it was exactly what I needed. I needed this film at this day. I went to go see it the day after. I went to a protest. I was protesting against the disability right cuts. Keke Palmer and SZA absolutely killed it in this role. Their chemistry on screen was insane. They had insane on-screen chemistry. And I don't know much about SZA's background, but can anyone let me know, does she have an acting background? Because she was really good, and this is the first time I've seen her in like a major movie role. So if this is her first role on screen, I would be very impressed. Obviously, we all know and love Keke. She is brilliant on the screen, but they really complemented each other really well. The pacing of the movie was excellent as well, because we were kind of given it, well, we were given deadlines within the plot to work towards. So they're given an eviction time, they're given this time, and we actually count down towards that time in the movie, which kept the pacing really good. Because sometimes you can get movies like that where they're fun and they're like fun to watch, but sometimes you feel like, oh, come on, like wrap it up now. But this felt like the pacing was working really well. I was like really rooting for these characters to succeed. And it's one of the first movies that I've been to in a really long time where, first of all, the screening was packed out. Like, yeah, it was a Saturday afternoon, but also like nearly every seat was full. Cinema was full, and everyone was laughing. Like, and there were people like younger than me there were people my age, or people a bit older, and then there was even some like older people there, which I thought was like, oh, I don't know if they're gonna like this, but they did. Everyone was laughing along, everyone was having a good time, and it really just felt like a good fun time movie. And this movie did what Opus failed to do, and that is that it delivered on what it advertised. This film advertised that it was going to be fun, it was going to be a good time in the cinema, and that's exactly what it did. And obviously it's a good fun film, but also as well, like, the characters you just really rooted for, you really wanted to see them succeed. And I do feel like they came to some kind of progression at the end of the film, because I think even if you've got a comedy like this, right, you still want your characters to be believable, to be able to root for them, and you also want to see some progression on the screen. By the end of the story, I want to see that their character has progressed, and that absolutely did happen. I absolutely love One of Them Days, and I gave it 4.5 stars. Now, the next movie that I saw in March was a comedy that I didn't love as much. I literally saw this in the same weekend. I saw it the next day, and that is Marching Powder, the Danny Dyer film. Now, I went into this film knowing, hey, look, I'm probably not going to be the target audience for this movie because it's a comedy about football hooliganism, basically, and drugs, and, you know, it's just, I know, I'm very aware, when I'm going to criticise this film, right, I'm very aware that I'm not the target audience for that, and that's fine. I mean, literally, within the first, like, 5 minutes, there was so many not so PC jokes, and I was like, okay. There was even a couple of jokes throughout the movie where like older people next to me were like gasping. They were a little bit shocked. So yeah, the tone of this movie is very much your dad, your uncle who doesn't care about being woke. But that being said, the movie itself is not in and of itself offensive. And one thing that I did really appreciate about the film was the jokes were kind of on a level playing field. And a lot of the jokes that I found really funny were actually taking shots at a lot of middle class people. There was just some really great one-liners. Like there's this one where Danny's wife in the film is going out and she's got like some kind of baker cap on, and he goes, "Why are you dressed like Jeremy Corbyn?" I fucking pissed myself. Like, it was just Danny's delivery made jokes like that really, really funny. It really elevated them. And I'll be honest, he's the reason I went to go see the film at all, because I do actually love Danny Dyer. I think he's really funny. And I think he is brilliant. So he's the reason that I went to go see the film at all. And he is one of the better parts of the film. He is also, unfortunately, for me, the film's downfall, but we'll get onto that in a bit. So the general synopsis of the film is you have Danny Dyer's character, who I think is called Jack. And what I found really funny is that they called his wife in the film Danny. And I was like, oh, okay. That's just your name, my love. So you have Jack and Danny, and they are on the verge of splitting up, divorce. They also have a young kid. I say young, he's actually not that young. I have no concept of children ages. Maybe he's like under 10 or just over 10. I don't know how children age these days. But they have a child together. And basically Jack's character is a bit of a football hooligan. He loves going out to all of the away games, does a lot of drugs, loves just football fighting. That's like his hobby, that's his thing. Basically, he gets arrested at a football fight, and the judge basically says to him, "You've got to do all of these things, otherwise I'm going to send you to jail." And so those things are, he has to attend marriage counselling, and he has to give up drugs, go clean, and he has to get a job. And now I will say, the character Jack is not your typical football hooligan. Like, he is generally quite funny, quite endearing, and does have like a caring side to his character, like when he's with his son and when he's with like his brother-in-law, who he's been tasked with caring for, who also has like a lot of mental health problems. So he's not your typical one-sided football hooligan character, and I did quite like that. I thought like they've given this character more dimensions, and the frustrating part is you can really see this character who could go on to have so much progression and really learn and really change a lot by the end of the film. And you can see in glimpses throughout the movie where he really is trying, and he really is trying to be better, but unfortunately he just can't seem to get there. It just seems that no matter what happens, he always finds himself back in a state of doing drugs again, or just fighting a football match. And some of those things that lead him to those decisions and falling back into those behaviours are out of his control, and are more to do with either the brother-in-law or the people around him, and some of them are just from him himself. And there were so many parts throughout the movie where I was like, right, this is going to be it. This is going to be the part where he distances himself from his friends, and he goes on to make better choices and blah 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 blah, and he just doesn't. And I'm gonna have to talk about the ending and give a little bit of a spoiler, because that is for me where the film really has its downfall. That the ending for me really ruined the film. So if you don't want to hear about that, I'm gonna leave the timestamp up here so you can go to the next movie. But in the ending, basically, Danny Dyer's character Jack passes his probation. He does all of the things that he's meant to do. May I add, he doesn't really do them, but he basically kind of gets away with it to the level where the judge can kind of see that he has made better choices. But he hasn't really changed his character. He hasn't started to treat his wife or his relationship with any more respect. And he goes through some really, really scary things, which, if that was me, it would really cause me to shake my act up, you know? Like, for one, he takes his kid in the car with his brother-in-law, where they get a gun pulled on him, basically, and his kid is fucking terrified. Now look, is that not enough for his character to go, things really need to change here? Like, that happens and they still go home and he still does a shit ton of drugs. Not only that, he sees his brother-in-law get stabbed in front of him. That's still not enough. It gets to the end of the movie and literally he goes straight from passing his probation to meeting up with his mates and getting into a football fight again. And I just think it was so disappointing to see this character who throughout the whole movie you're like, right, this is going to be the moment for change, this is going to be the moment for change, and you think he's finally got there because this nearly life or death thing happened, and then he goes straight back to his old behaviour. And just before he does it, he goes off on this speech where he kind of really talks down about like middle class people, and he's kind of taking the piss out of people who listen to like the rest is politics and people who think they're like better educated and blah blah blah, and there's a lot of that throughout the movie, and I don't necessarily have a problem with that. I think he's actually making a really funny point on that, because there are so many middle class people who kind of like have this attitude and they have this kind of snobbery, and I think the what the film's strength is actually really laughing about that. But then that doesn't negate what you're then going to go on to do, because football hooliganism, I can't even say it, football hooliganism is a horrible part of this country's culture. I'm sorry, like maybe I just don't get it, but I really think it's a horrible part of this country's culture. I live quite near to West Ham, and I'm not saying obviously all West Ham supporters are like this, blah 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 blah, but there is that fear from football fans that I fear off of football fans in this country. Like I won't get the Jubilee line like down that way if I know there's a match on and blah 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 blah. And like I remember multiple times I've been to Wembley to go to a show and there's been a game on at the football stadium where I've been in the arena, and like the fear you feel from football fans in like this country is an issue, and I really didn't want to feel like this off of this movie, because I did actually enjoy the majority of it, but I feel like the ending really trivialized the problems that the character has. It really trivialized his drug issue, it really trivialized the issue of football violence, and I feel like if the character had a moment at the end where his character progressed and he didn't go off and get straight into a fight, I wouldn't feel that way. But it was the fact that the character just showed no progression by the end of it. And that doesn't mean he has to then suddenly go on to like listening to the rest of his politics and become all of the middle class things that he was poking fun at. He doesn't have to suddenly become all of that, but you also don't have to be this stereotype of a working class character as well. And I feel like the film really walked the line of showing the character as being a bit more three-dimensional and being like quite funny, and this really funny three-dimensional working class character, and in the end I really feel like it made him a caricature, because it kind of gives the illusion that there is only the option of becoming this middle class snob who does and partakes in all of those things that he's laughing about, or there is this working class football hooligan who gets into specifically searches out violence at football matches, does a load of drugs and puts like his kids into danger. And I think like I just think the ending for me was so disappointing, and it didn't have to be one or two ways. For me, how I would correct it, I think it would have been really good to have seen the character distance himself from his friends and not get involved in those football matches, football violence, because you can still go and do all of that stuff. Like there are so many people who are interested in football, who watch football, who go out with their mates and they manage to not beat people up, you know? I just think that's the direction that I needed to see the character go in for the film to be satisfying for me. But that's just my thoughts and feelings. And unfortunately, because of that ending, I did give the film 2.5 stars, which I'll be honest, up until the ending, I was quite enjoying it, and I probably would have given it more a 3.5 or a 4. But the ending just completely tanked it for me. Fourth film that I saw in March was The Woman in the Yard, and I saw this with my dad. I had no idea what this film was going to be about going into it. I had not even watched the trailer, because I'll be honest, I've stopped watching trailers for movies after the Companion fiasco drama. I've just stopped watching trailers for movies, and I just go watch them now because I'm going to go watch them anyway. So yeah, the fourth movie that I saw in March was The Woman in the Yard, and it is a horror film. And the general plot synopsis of the film is that you have this mother at home with her two children. One of them is like a teenage boy and one of them is quite a young girl, and while they're in the kitchen one morning, after the power being cut out, there is a mysterious woman who just comes and sits in the yard, and she's dressed in, I would say, like more Victorian like funeral attire. It's like a full black face covering garment, but not like a burqa. It's like Victorian like funeral attire. I would say it's black lace covers, so you can't see her identity at all. And she's completely covered, and she just brings a chair and she sits in this woman's front yard, and she won't leave. The woman in the house, the mother, goes out to speak to her, and she seems very confused, doesn't really know what's going on, and is a little bit creepy, let's say. So the mum goes back in the house. The mum, now this is a very important part, the mum is injured, has a really bad leg injury, because only, I think, a few weeks before was in actually a fatal car crash where the kid's dad passes away. And the rest of the film is basically about the tension of this woman sitting in the yard, trying to get this woman to leave, and finding out who this woman is. Now, let me say, there's a lot of controversy around this film because of some of the themes that become more blatant, I think, towards the last 20 minutes or so. The twist, I kind of guessed, but not in the way that I thought it was going to be. I thought the film was very tense. I thought it was beautifully shot. Like, some of the shots across the yard, and when you see the house, and when you see, because it's in, I don't know America very well, but it feels quite Southern America to me, at least. Like, there's lots of beautiful shots of the yard and this old house, and I thought it was shot absolutely beautifully. Also, as well, the cast, including the two kids, were absolutely phenomenal. Like, I cannot explain to you, like, especially the young teenage boy was really, really incredible. He was so phenomenal, and I think he's going to have a really good career. I've never seen him in anything before, but he, was really, really good. And he managed to convey a lot of that teenage angst, but also really carried the horror elements of the movie really well as well. And he was just really, really believable. Now, I feel like I can't finish the rest of the review of this film without giving some spoilers, because I'll be honest, most of my review of this film is very intertwined with the twist and the ending and all of that. So if you haven't seen it and if you don't want to know the spoilers, I'm going to leave a timestamp on the screen here. But the big twist is basically that the woman in the yard, the woman under the veil, is in some way connected to the mum, and it is almost like all of the darker parts, it's a metaphor for all of the darker, sinister thoughts that the mum has been having, because the movie obviously opens up just after she's lost her husband and the kids have lost their dad, and it opens up with her rewatching old videos of them together, and she's clearly going through a lot, she's clearly grieving a lot, and she's processing a lot of stuff, and she's having, you can tell, a really hard time. And so this woman in the yard appears as almost like a dark manifestation of all of those dark thoughts of grief and even suicide. And so that's the twist. I kind of guessed that it was going to be her. I didn't realise that it was going to be so directly related to suicide, and that's where the controversy comes in. People are saying that the last 20 minutes or so, where it's basically kind of shows the woman going to kill herself, and she's doing that because the woman in the yard, she's got inside the house at this point, she is terrorising that fucking family, and she is basically kind of forcing the hand of the mother to do that. And it is really graphic, I'll be honest, and it's graphic not because you see anything, because I'll be honest, she doesn't commit suicide. So you do see her with the gun and putting it to her head, but I think for me, the feeling that made it so graphic was just the emotion. Like, you really see this mother who, she's just said goodbye to her kids because the dark force, the dark entity of her is convincing her to kill herself, so she sent her kids away. And you really feel like her pain. She doesn't want to go, she doesn't want to say goodbye to her kids, but she can't coexist with this dark side of herself, and you really feel that pain in this character. And for me, that's what made it so graphic. Not graphic in the way of which you actually physically see anything. And I'll be honest, I actually really loved the metaphor. I thought it was a really, really good metaphor, and I think it was pulled off so well because the actors made it so believable. My dad was a little bit confused, I think, by the last 20 minutes, just because there's a lot of chopping and changing, there's a lot of scene cuts and everything like that, so it is a little bit like, oh, I think I know what's going on, but am I? Because it purposely confuses you. But I thought the film made a very, very important point, and it even flashes up with the suicide helpline number. Why do I feel really dark right now? I think it's because the sun is like overexposed behind me, so I'm really sorry if this screen is really dark right now. But I thought the messaging of the film was really, really powerful, and yes, it was really uncomfortable. But not only was the messaging of the film really important, and the themes and the creation of this character, the woman in the yard, really, really important. But also it was just a good horror film. I thought it was really tense. I was scared for the family, and I'm happy to say the dog survived. Oh my god, I thought that dog was gonna die. Every 2 seconds I was like, well, that's the dog gone, that's the dog gone. The dog survives, thank god. My only criticism of the film, if I was gonna give it any criticism, would be I feel like there could have been done a little bit more earlier on in the film to help me connect with the family and all of the characters, just that little bit more, just to find out a little bit more about them so I can build up that relationship, so the stakes of them surviving feel a little bit higher. Now, you could argue that that's not the point of the film, like it's not really about them, it's more about like the themes and the messaging of suicidal thoughts, and the point is that it could be anyone. And I would like, yeah, okay, that's a fair enough argument. But I think for me, because a lot of it is also a horror film, I'm thinking these characters are in danger and I really want to root for them more. And I felt like I needed to build up a bit more of a connection with their individual personalities. I understood the stakes of the family unit, but I wanted to connect with the individual characters a little bit more. But I did enjoy this film, and I gave it 3.5 stars. And the final film that I saw at the cinema in March was Mickey 17. Now let me tell you, I do not understand all the hate for this movie. It took me so long to go see this film because everyone was just like really mixed reviews about it. Everyone was just talking about how much it lost at the box office, and I was like, oh, maybe it's like not living up to what I wanted it to be, because I was really excited about this film for ages. Finally go to see it. Oh my god, guys, I love this film. I really, really loved it. I thought it was a little bit different. It was still, I would say the themes and the genre of the film were still within the realm of sort of like sci-fi, but it also had a lot of elements of political comedy. And I just thought it was a good mix of a lot of different genres. Also, the casting was phenomenal. We need to talk about Mark Ruffalo. Yes, obviously, Robert Pattinson was amazing. And also, I thought the way that he was able to bring the two very different Mickeys to life, because there's Mickey 17, Mickey 18, who have very different personalities at the same time within the same scene. Incredible talent. But also, Mark Ruffalo. Oh, he was so brilliant. Like, he clearly took a lot of influence in his performance from Donald Trump. Like, I think like that's very clear. When I was watching it, I was like, oh, someone's been studying Donald Trump, and given we know his political and social beliefs, that feels like a choice for him to make. But it didn't feel like a caricature for me. I feel like he really brought this character to life using those real life inspirations, and the character was my favourite kind of villain, which is someone who I hate. I really don't like him, but I love to see him on the screen because he's so fascinating to watch. We also had Toni Collette, who is obviously, you know, the infamous Toni Collette, but also plays the mum in Hereditary, and she was just fantastic. And her chemistry with Mark Ruffalo and what they were able to create with their characters was just so incredible to watch. I love watching them two together. But yeah, I did not understand this hate for this film. It was really, really enjoyable. The plot was really interesting, and even though it used a lot of similar themes and like it was in the realm of a lot of like genres of what we've seen like recently, it was still really new and interesting, and it made a lot of points and a lot of commentary, I think, about our society, particularly about politically, because Mark Ruffalo's character was like a failed politician basically, who is then going on this expedition into space. Like, where does that sound familiar? And also what it says about the creepers, who are the creatures that they basically go and inhabit their land and then call them the aliens. I thought it was really, really good. I thought not only did it have a lot of messaging and it made a lot of social commentary, the film was just really, really enjoyable, and the characters were really enjoyable. It was really funny, and some of the humour was also quite dark, because obviously Mickey is an expendable. He is basically invincible. They send him out to do really dangerous jobs. They basically use him like a testing rat lab, and then they just reprint another version of him when he dies. So because a lot of the film is about death, a lot of the humour is quite dark, and it really, really works. And the film is quite long. I think it was near 2.5 hours, which is quite a bit longer than the other films that I saw that month. But I wasn't checking my phone, not once, and that for me is a pedometer, like a measure of how well the pacing is and if a film is going on for too long. I did not check the time once. I thought it was really, really well paced, and I felt like the story was continuously moving. And I feel like what seems to be a big theme of this video and this series is me talking about character progression. So another reason why I really love this film is Mickey's character experiences such a growth. I won't give away the ending and what happens, but there is such a big transformation, like physically, but also within his character growing and expanding. And he's like growing and expanding throughout the film, like every time he dies, but also because of a result of the characters around him, like Nasha, who is his partner, his girlfriend in the film, and the ways that those relationships impact him, allow him to grow, but also the relationship he has with himself in the form of the other Mickey, of Mickey 18. And not only does he allow him, I think, to become a little bit more confident and a little bit more comfortable in his skin, and also help to fight a lot of the demons and a lot of the PTSD that he has been put through because he wasn't expendable, which is so cruel. And even though it is a bit of a quirky sci-fi film with a lot of dark humour, there are some really beautiful elements like that where I think the characters really help bring that to life, and they help to make, because I love sci-fi, but I still think like one of the reasons why I love Doctor Who, why Doctor Who is one of my favourites like forms of sci-fi, is because it feels very human. Like, you can have a Doctor Who episode set on a made-up planet that no one has ever heard of, full of people that are green and 10 foot tall, but it will still feel like the most human thing on the BBC that year because of the way that the characters are wrote. And I think that, for me, is what makes good sci-fi. Because it's not enough to simply have the fantasy and the quirkiness of aliens. What makes sci-fi so compelling for me is the way it relates to our lives, and the way it makes our lives feel on screen. And I think you have to be able to bring the humanity to the story and able to do that, because you can write all of these alien characters and make them look all kooky, and it can be really interesting and alluring, but you want to bring the humanity into it so that we can relate to it. And I feel like this film did this really well, because it had this really dark, quirky, generally a bit weird concept, but it made it feel quite human and quite realistic, because the only reason he got into that program in the first place and agreed to be an expendable because he was in debt. Like, it's a bit Squid Games-esque, but I mean, look, so many people can relate to that. I really, really enjoyed this film, and I gave it 4 stars. And for me, it is the perfect example of why you cannot judge a film based off its box office success. Because this film, I think, did not do very well at the box office. It did tank, but it's such a fantastic film, and there can be so many reasons why a film doesn't do well at the box office. It doesn't necessarily make it a bad film, and it's the same for me when people judge music based off streaming. I had no idea what happened there. My memory card has just been really weird and saying it's full when it's not. So we're filming this outro on my phone. But as I was saying, that album flops or that music flops because like it doesn't do as well on streaming, or it's not like the most successful thing in streaming that month. And it's like, McDonald's sells the most burgers in the world every day. We're not going to them for recipe and culinary techniques, are we? But I do think that is part of such a bigger problem where content and art has become so much about consumption, and I feel like we really rate things based on their consumerism rather than like the actual art and the technique of it. But that's a whole other conversation. But that was all of the films that I saw at the cinema in March. Are you going to go see them yourself? Have you seen them already? What was your favourite? What was your least favourite? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to like, subscribe, all that good stuff, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!